The MM-104 Patriot is the most recognizable silhouette in modern air defense. For decades, its green boxy canisters have been a staple of land-based military power. But the Patriot is currently undergoing a transformation that is forcing a total rethink of naval strategy. In a series of landmark tests, the PAC-3 MSE, the Patriot's most lethal variant, was successfully fired from a ship's Mark 41 vertical launch system, fully integrated into the Navy's Aegis combat system. This isn't just a hardware swap, it is the tactical merging of the Army and Navy to counter a specific terrifying threat, the hypersonic carrier killer. The logic is technical. While the Navy has the standard missile family, the PAC-3 MSE brings unique hit-to-kill precision. Unlike traditional interceptors, the Patriot uses a specialized K-band seeker and 180 micro-rocket motors to physically collide with warheads at hypersonic speeds. This kinetic impact is the only reliable way to vaporize maneuverable ballistic missiles. Faced with threats that could sink a billion-dollar carrier, the Navy has adopted a weapon originally built for the Army. But the Patriot didn't start as a silver bullet. Its reputation was forged in the chaotic skies of the 1991 Gulf War, the era of the spear and the shield. As the first Iraqi Scuds streaked toward their targets, the world learned that being a guardian came with a tragic learning curve. In January 1991, the world watched the first live televised duel of missile defense, as Iraqi Al-Hussein missiles, modified Scuds, streaked toward cities in Saudi Arabia and Israel. The Patriot PAC-2 was deployed as the primary shield. While the footage of white streaks arching across the night sky suggested a flawless success, the engineers behind the scenes were discovering that the gap between Cold War simulations and the chaotic physics of real combat was dangerously wide. To understand these challenges, we must first look at the system's architecture. The Patriot is not a single vehicle, but a distributed network of three modular components. First is the AN/MPQ-53 radar, a phased array system that uses over 5,000 individual elements to scan the sky without moving its antenna. Second is the engagement control station, a mobile command van where operators manage the automated engagement logic. Finally, there are the M901 launchers, positioned hundreds of meters away to ensure the battery's survival if the radar is targeted. During the Gulf War, the PAC-2 relied on a guidance method called track via missile. In this loop, the ground radar illuminates the target, and the missile seeker captures the reflected energy. Instead of calculating its own path, the missile transmits this raw data back to the ECS. The ground-based computers calculate the intercept trajectory and send steering commands back to the missile. This centralized logic allowed the Patriot to process complex data that 1980s-era missile hardware couldn't handle alone. However, the Scuds were more difficult targets than expected. Because the Al-Hussein was a poorly modified, unstable missile, it frequently broke apart upon re-entering the atmosphere. This created a clutter problem. The Patriot's radar often tracked the largest piece of debris, usually the spent fuel tank, rather than the smaller, high-explosive warhead. Furthermore, the PC-2 utilized a blast fragmentation warhead designed to shred the thin skin of a fighter jet. But against a hardened steel Scud warhead, these fragments often failed to trigger a detonation. The Patriot might hit the Scud, but the live warhead would frequently survive the impact and slam into the ground. The most tragic technical failure occurred on February 25, 1991, in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. This was not a failure of the rockets or the radar, but a software rounding error. The system's internal clock utilized 24-bit floating point math, which could not perfectly represent a tenth of a second. The Patriot was designed for mobile, short-term use, but in Dhahran, the battery had been running continuously for over 100 hours. This tiny mathematical error accumulated into a 0.34-second delay. At supersonic speeds, this meant the radar was looking over 600 meters away from the Scud's actual position. The system failed to track the threat, and the resulting impact on an Army barracks claimed 28 lives. The lessons from 1991 were harsh. Software precision was a matter of life and death, and the fragmentation approach was too unreliable for ballistic defense. To truly protect a city or a fleet, the interceptor had to do more than just explode near its target. It had to physically collide with the warhead to ensure total destruction. This realization drove the next 30 years of development, leading to the birth of the PAC-3 and a technology that once seemed impossible: the hit-to-kill interceptor. The transition from the PAC-2 to the PAC-3 was more than just a hardware update. It was a fundamental shift in the physics of destruction. Engineers realized that against a heavy, steel-encased ballistic warhead, a proximity explosion was a gamble. To guarantee a kill, you couldn't just wound the target with shrapnel, you had to vaporize it. This led to the development of hit-to-kill technology, a concept often described as hitting a bullet with a bullet. At the heart of the PAC-3 is a radical departure from traditional missile design. Because the goal is a direct physical collision, the PAC-3 is significantly smaller and more agile than its predecessors. While the older PAC-2 was 5 meters long and weighed 900 kilograms, the PAC-3 is roughly 1/3 that size. This smaller airframe allows a single Patriot launcher to carry 16 PAC-3 missiles instead of just 4, drastically increasing the battery's firepower in a saturation attack. But hitting a target traveling at several times the speed of sound requires an unprecedented level of precision. To achieve this, the PAC-3 MSE, the Missile Segment Enhancement, utilizes two critical technologies. The first is an active K-band radar seeker in the nose. Unlike the older missiles that relied on a ground station to see for them, the PAC-3 MSE is autonomous in its final seconds. The K-band radar operates at a much higher frequency than standard radars, providing a high-resolution image of the target that allows the missile to distinguish between a warhead and a piece of debris. The second, and perhaps most impressive feature, is the attitude control motor system. Located near the nose of the missile is a ring of 180 micro-rocket motors. In the final milliseconds before impact, these motors fire in rapid millisecond bursts to nudge the missile's flight path with surgical accuracy. While traditional missiles use fins to steer through the air, fins lose their effectiveness at high altitudes where the atmosphere is thin. The ACMs, however, work in a vacuum, providing the instantaneous lateral force needed to ensure the missile's nose slams directly into the enemy warhead. This collision is an exercise in pure kinetic energy. Because the closing velocity between the Patriot and a ballistic missile can exceed Mach 10, the energy released upon impact is massive. The formula for kinetic energy, 1/2 mass times velocity squared, explains why a 300-kilogram missile traveling at these speeds doesn't need an explosive warhead. The sheer force of the impact turns both the interceptor and the target warhead into a cloud of incandescent gas and microscopic dust. This total lethality is why the PAC-3 MSE is now the gold standard for terminal defense, capable of stopping the world's most advanced maneuverable threats. While the PAC-3 MSE provides the muscle for interception, the most significant leap in modern air defense isn't the missile itself, but the operating system that controls it. Historically, the Patriot was a stovepipe system. A single battery consisted of one radar, one control station, and a few launchers. They were physically and digitally tethered together. If the radar was destroyed or jammed, the entire battery became useless. Today, that rigid structure is being dismantled by a technology called IBCS, the Integrated Battle Command System. IBCS represents a shift from platform-centric to network-centric warfare. Its core philosophy is known as any sensor, best shooter. In this architecture, a Patriot launcher no longer needs its own AN/MPQ-65 radar to engage a target. Instead, IBCS creates a unified data mesh that fuses information from every available source on the battlefield. This could include an F-35's stealth sensors, a Navy Aegis destroyer's radar, or even a remote Sentinel short-range sensor. By combining these different perspectives, IBCS creates a single high-fidelity composite track of an incoming threat that is far more accurate than what any single radar could produce. This networking solves one of the Patriot's oldest vulnerabilities, the line of sight problem. Because the Earth is curved, a ground-based radar cannot see a low-flying cruise missile until it is very close to the horizon. But with IBCS, a Patriot battery can receive targeting data from an airborne E-3 AWACS or a fighter jet flying high above the terrain. The Patriot can then launch its missile at a target that is still hundreds of miles away and hidden behind mountains or the horizon. The missile flies toward the target using the network's data, only activating its own seeker in the final seconds of flight. Furthermore, this decentralized approach drastically increases survivability. In a traditional setup, the radar is a magnet for anti-radiation missiles because it must stay active to guide the interceptor. Under IBCS, launchers can be distributed over a massive area, miles away from the command center and the sensors. A battery can remain silent, not emitting any detectable energy, while receiving data from a remote sensor. This makes it nearly impossible for an adversary to locate and destroy the brain of the defense network. However, as the Patriot becomes more intelligent and more precise, it faces a new low-tech crisis. The very sophistication that allows it to stop a hypersonic missile is becoming a liability in an era of cheap warfare. We have perfected the art of hitting a bullet with a bullet, but we are now discovering that the bullets we are fighting are often cheaper than the fuel used to launch them. This brings us to the most pressing challenge of the 2020s, the brutal economics of asymmetric defense. Despite its technical brilliance, the Patriot system is currently navigating a brutal cost exchange crisis. The system has proven it can intercept high-end threats like the Russian Kh-47 Kinzhal, but it is now being forced to engage a much lowlier enemy, the attrition drone. This represents a fundamental shift in the economics of air defense. A single PAC-3 MSE interceptor costs approximately $4 million. In contrast, a mass-produced suicide drone, like those increasingly seen in modern conflicts, can be manufactured for as little as $20,000 to $50,000. This creates a staggering 100-to-1 or even 200-to-1 cost ratio. In a saturation attack, where an adversary launches dozens of cheap drones alongside a few high-end missiles, the defender faces a mathematical trap. Using a $4 million Patriot to kill a $20,000 drone is not just expensive, it is a path to strategic exhaustion. The challenge is exacerbated by industrial capacity. Modern high-intensity warfare consumes ammunition at a rate that peacetime production lines struggle to match. While Lockheed Martin is currently ramping up production toward roughly 550 to 650 PAC-3 MSE missiles per year, a single week of high-intensity conflict can exhaust several months of that output. This creates a dangerous interceptor gap. It isn't just about whether you have the money to buy more, it's about whether the factory can physically build them fast enough to replace what was fired last night. This bottleneck is forcing a tactical evolution. The Patriot is no longer viewed as a catch-all shield. To survive the math of modern warfare, it must operate within a layered defense framework. In this hierarchy, the Patriot is the high-tier specialist, reserved exclusively for ballistic and hypersonic threats that no other system can hit. Meanwhile, cheaper solutions, such as electronic jammers, directed energy, or traditional anti-aircraft cannons, are tasked with clearing the drone swarms. The Patriot's role has moved from being the only defender to being the most valuable and most protected asset in a much larger defensive architecture. The 60-year journey of the MIM-104 Patriot is a case study in constant engineering adaptation. It began as a Cold War dream to replace aging anti-aircraft guns, survived the controversial lessons of the 1991 Gulf War, and evolved into a networked brain capable of breaking the myth of hypersonic invincibility. It has transformed from a standalone battery into a flexible, data-driven node that defines how modern air defense is conducted. Ultimately, the Patriot's greatest strength is its ability to outgrow its original design. This brings us back to the high seas. The successful integration of the PAC-3 MSE into the Navy's Mark 41 vertical launch system marks the completion of the system's maturity. By moving from the back of a truck to the deck of a destroyer, the Patriot has transcended its origins as a specialized Army tool to become a universal interceptor. As the Navy integrates this land-based technology into the Aegis combat system, the traditional barriers between land and sea defense are effectively dissolving. Whether it is deployed on a remote airfield or a mid-ocean carrier strike group, the PAC-3 MSE provides the same uncompromising, hit-to-kill security. In the eternal race between the spear and the shield, the Patriot has proven that intelligence, precision, and networked data can overcome raw speed. 60 years after its conception, the green box on the horizon remains the final line of defense. It is a system that has learned, through decades of combat and technical refinement, that in the world of missile defense, there is no such thing as good enough. As long as threats continue to evolve in the sky, the Patriot will be there to meet them, no longer just as a missile, but as an invisible global grid of protection.